Good afternoon and welcome to Rubbin'Minds. My name is Isabella Adediji. Now, a lot of people have said 2020 was the year of the Nigerian youth. That was the year Nigerian youth stood up to the government. We can all cast our minds back to the 2020 protest at the Lekki Gate. People just came together across different tribes, ethnicities, religion, all came together to protest for good governance. They came with their demands. Now, 4 years later, can the Nigerian youth reprise that same energy, that same level of organization in coming together to demand for good governance? Now, to discuss the Nigerian youth, to discuss if Nigerians are really ready for protest, I'm joined by a human rights lawyer in the person of Inibehe Effiong. Welcome to Rubbin'Minds.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for honoring our invitation. And also joining us via Zoom is a good governance advocate in the person of Joyce Daniels. Welcome to Rubbin'Minds.
It's good to be here again. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you on the show. Now, I'm going to go straight to Inibehe, and I just want you to cast your mind back to 2020, NSAS, the protest. Do you think that young people can organize themselves that same way in 2024, as there have been a lot of murmurings, a lot of WhatsApp messages, a lot of messages going around about a possible protest?
Thank you. I think for me, the lesson from NSAS is that when Nigerians, particularly the young people of this country, galvanize and organize towards a common purpose, they can achieve a lot. If there is one thing that we have learned from NSAS, it is that the ruling elite, the political class, is terrified by any form of organization by young Nigerians. Now, the NSAS protest witnessed for the first time, at least in my adult life, where young people came together across different parts of the country to demand police reform. But the trigger was the notorious Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS. However, you cannot deny the fact that what precipitated that protest was largely failure of governance. So one would have thought that a government that is historically aware, a government that has a sense of historical consciousness, would have learned important lessons from NSAS, namely that it is important, it is critical to engage with the young people of our country, to begin to do things differently, and to ensure that you listen to the complaints of our people. But what have we seen since 2020?
Do you think this government is afraid of this youth, or do you think this government has been able to somehow find a way to not even allow youth to come together to protest?
I think what we have seen is the notorious strategy, if I should characterize it as such, the divide and rule. We see the government or people sympathetic to the government push this divisive narrative on social media. So when they see that young people are beginning to organize themselves, they try to poison the minds of our youth by introducing ethnicity, religious bigotry, and partisan politics into the conversation. And we see that trajectory on social media, where arguments on issues, debates, becomes polarized, and that in some sense has reduced what is supposed to be the collective aspirations of our youth. But at the same time, I think to a large extent people are being pushed to the wall. It is getting to a point that the question is no longer whether people are going to protest or whether indeed there is a reason to protest, but the form of the protest and the date of the protest. And I hear people say, well, you need leadership, there has to be organization. And for me, I don't think that argument persuade some of us. Some of us are not persuaded by it. I don't think young people necessarily need to come together to say, oh, we are nominating person A, B, C, and D to be our representatives. Because the issues that is leading or is making people to call for a round of protest, another round of protest, are issues that are common to most Nigerians. Hunger, unemployment, inflation, the fact that despite what the country is experiencing, an economy that has almost collapsed, we still see profligacy. We still see the government waste resources. So the youths are watching, young people are watching. They are looking at the convoy of the president. They are looking at the aircraft that the president is purchasing. They are looking at the yachts that they want to buy. They are looking at the earnings of National Assembly members. They are looking at the expenditure that we are seeing on a daily basis. And they are asking themselves, how do you tell us not to protest? How do you tell us not to come together? And yet you are dissipating our resources. So I believe that the question is not whether people are going to protest. The question is, for how long will that protest last?
So do you feel that this Nigerian youth feels safe enough to hit the streets, considering what happened during the NSAS protest? Because it went on for quite a while till there was some form of military intervention and allegedly lives were lost. I mean, there was a whole panel set up by the Lagos state government, and even when the youth have tried to organize themselves to do other protests subsequently, we've seen a lot of police officers on the road. We've seen a lot of intimidation. So do you feel that the average Nigerian youth is ready to risk their life or feel safe enough that it is their right to hit the streets?
I think most Nigerian youths have taken inspiration from the from the very resounding statement of the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who had tweeted in the past warning the police not to harass Nigerians or to harass people who are protesting. And if you go on social media, you will also see documented statements issued in the past by this president, encouraging public protest. It is the same for other people in the government. So when we look back, I believe that Tinubu is actually a supporter of protests. His public statements in that regard are very clear. And those who are going to come out to protest, they are not going to be inhibited by intimidation, by threats, because what is the issue really about? The policeman on the streets who is being given an AK-47 to shoot at a protester, when he goes back home, he's also affected by the economy. Our soldiers that are being deployed to stop people from protesting, they are also victims of the misgovernance. Even personnel of the self-security service, they have families. They are affected by what is going on. So I think we have gotten to a point that we are all collective victims of the misrule. So whether the government wants to engage, whether the government wants to have a conversation, whether the government wants to listen or not, it is up to them. But one thing is certain. I don't think Nigerians are willing to be a conquered people. I don't think we are ready to live in a country where we cannot exercise our constitutional rights. Because that is the point that we have to stress, that protesting is not a gift, right? It is not something that the government say, oh, I have decided to give it to you today. As a matter of fact, Section 39 of our Constitution guarantees the right to freedom of expression. Section 40 of the Constitution guarantees the right to peaceful assembly and association. And in exercising that right, you don't need the consent of the police. Indeed, even when the law enforcement agencies, for example, as they typically do, come out to say, oh, we have gathered intelligence that hoodlums are going to hijack the protest, that miscreants are going to take over, are going to cause
mayhem, damage to buildings.
The law remains that even when you have gathered such intelligence, even when you believe that that protest will turn violent, you do not have the right to stop it. And this is an argument that we have fought and won in courts, including the case of Inspector General of Police and ANPP, where the then General Buhari led members of his party to protest. And the case of, Charlie Boy Oputa and Inspector General of Police, the courts have made this clear. So even when you believe there will be violence, people still have the right to protest.
And this government needs to respect the rule of law. I'd like to move to Joyce Daniels. I'd like you to weigh into the conversation around the readiness of the Nigerian youth to protest. Are Nigerian youth ready? Are they going to hit the streets? And if yes, do they need to be organized, or as soon as it affects everyone just needs to come out of their own volition?
Thank you, Isabella. I think Nigerian youths are indeed ready to protest. Around me, I hear a lot of younger people say they are ready because they're just tired of being, as it were, sidelined. The word is, they feel like they're not cared for, they're not listened to. I think my colleague in the studio has said a lot already. They feel like the government just takes advantage of youth and doesn't care, like, make una try now, do your worst, that kind of thing. So many are indeed ready. Whether they need to be organized, I don't think so. I think they just need to show up in the different groups that they belong to. And even if you don't belong to any group and you feel like you're a part of, it resonates with you, the issues resonate with you, and you want to go out there, then go out there and just do it right. The thing is, you want your voice to be heard, not necessarily to be violent. You just want your voice to be heard. So yes, to the youths who are ready to go out, I think this is the time.
Joyce, I also want to ask, have the protests been effective? And is this the strategy that should be employed by the youth? Or should there be some maybe engagement with the government, maybe at policy level, at National Assembly level? Or is protesting the right strategy for now?
Protest is one of the right strategies. Yes, there would be engagement. Yes, people have been writing open letters. Some groups and civil society organizations have been reaching out to government to engage. And protest is just one of many other tactics that can be employed in the strategy to engage government.
Okay, I'll move to you, Inibehe. Are protests really guaranteed to give results, going by what we've seen in the past? Would you consider those protests successful, and will such protests be successful like we've seen in other climes like Kenya, for example?
There is no alternative to protest. I think that is just the truth of the matter. We are dealing with people that are intentionally deaf. We are dealing with people that are deliberately blind to the voices of our people and to the collective suffering of the Nigerian masses. So when the question is asked, that is protest the solution? We can also ask, it's a rhetorical question. Because if protest is not the solution, what is the solution? Are we going to go to the National Assembly? We are not lawmakers. Those
right, like Joy said, writing letters, engaging with lawmakers.
Who are you going to write the letter to? Are you going to write a letter to people who don't even have the time to read? Because if they have the time to read, they should be conversant with the problems of the country. And what is the debate even about? It took protests to end colonialism. It took protests to end military rule. It took protests to end apartheid in South Africa. It took protests to even bring the APC to power. In 2012, the whole country was shut down for 2 weeks. President Tinubu supported it. Those who are in this government supported it. So there is no alternative to protest. It is a democratic means of civic engagement. When people are not heard, they have the right to come out. And it's not a localized matter. Whether it's in the US, we see people protest for all sorts of things. Protest is a global phenomenon. We don't have an alternative to protest. Particularly, 1 year has passed. Nigerians have been patient. We've given the president 1 year. Because it's not just about the president.
So Nigerians need answers now. And one way to listen to a government, in your own words, that is deliberately deaf and blind, is to hit the streets. I'll move over to Joyce. And right now, I want you to address the issue of polarization. Inibehe had already spoken about it, where people are polarized on political lines. For example, Bayo Ononuga, a presidential media aide, has accused the 2023 presidential candidate of the opposition Labour Party, Peter Obi's supporters, of planning anti-hunger protests on August 1st, claiming they aim to create chaos in Nigeria. Do you agree? Do you agree on this polarization? And is it enough to bring some sort of instability to the planned protests?
When I read that tweet this morning by Bayo Onanuga, I was so disgusted by it. It's one of the most silly tweets. It's a blind-sided. It's inconsiderate to say that only supporters of Peter Obi are interested in protesting. We have videos rife online by APC members, APC supporters, APC apologists, Tinubu supporters, who are also going through the crunch in the country and are calling for better governance. They're calling for better transparency. They're calling for cost of governance to be cut. So for Bayo Onanuga or anybody else to, zero it in and polarize the discussion is playing on the intelligence of people, and I think it should be discouraged. It's a polarizing statement, and it is totally and completely condemned by myself and many others who read it. The hunger in the land, the anger in the land is not only felt by people who support Peter Obi. It's felt by all Nigerians. Everyone is buying petrol at the same rate. Everyone is experiencing the crunch in hunger and all the issues with importation and selling business. So how can he even put that on? Well, then again, it's Bayo Onanuga. He doesn't surprise us by some stuff that he writes on social media.
Inibe, over to you. That polarization which you spoke of, is that enough to destabilize the efforts? Are people going to go back to what happened at the polls in 2023, where people were going against each other on religious lines, on ethnic lines, on just different ideologies? Are we going to see the same thing play out during the protests?
I want to first, join my voice with the guests from the other end to say that the utterly embarrassing and provocative statement by Bayo Onanuga stands condemned. We must learn as a country to deplatform people who use their offices to create chaos. That statement that he made is highly offensive, and this is coming from a person who, from his tweets in the past, has supported protests. In fact, I even quoted one of them where he said, "Let Jonathan go, let subsidy remain." So this is somebody who historically has been opposed to government, and suddenly, because his stomach is being filled, is now trying to demonize, to create division. We have to condemn such rhetorics. But regarding the issue of polarization, for me, I feel that Nigerians must ask themselves the question, right? Because when Buhari was president, some of our brothers and sisters in the north felt, well, we have one of us in power. At the end, Katsina, where he lives, where he comes from, was barely habitable. The north was ravaged by banditry. People were slaughtered. Hunger had escalated. So it is never about pride.
Inibe, that's all we can take on this segment. Thank you very much for joining us on Rubbin'Minds, and thank you, Joyce Daniels, for your contributions on Rubbin'Minds. Well, now